I've worked at Holden Consulting for 6 years, and in that time I've learned exactly one thing about corporate life. Nobody notices the person who does the work. They notice the person who talks about the work. Priya Malhotra joined our team 8 months ago as a senior strategist, a title that, on paper, put her one rung above me. In practice, I trained her. I walked her through our client dashboards, our reporting templates, even our internal shorthand for flagging problem accounts. She was pleasant enough. Quick to laugh at the right jokes, quicker to agree with whoever was speaking loudest in a meeting. I didn't think much of it. Not until the Castellan account. Castellan Retail Group was our biggest prospective client of the year, a chain looking to overhaul their entire supply chain analytics. I spent 11 weeks building the pitch deck. Not help build. Built. Nights, a cancelled weekend trip with my sister, a Saturday spent redoing the projection models because our director, Marcus Feld, wanted sharper numbers 3 days before the pitch. Priya sat in on exactly 2 of those working sessions. She asked good questions, I'll give her that. She had a way of repeating your idea back to you dressed up in slightly different words, nodding like she'd arrived at it herself. The pitch was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Marcus asked me Wednesday night, 9:47 p.m., I remember, because I was still at my desk, if I'd be comfortable letting Priya co-present, since she was newer and needed visibility with leadership. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What was I going to say? No, let the new girl fail in front of the client. I wanted the account to land more than I wanted credit for a slide deck. I did not expect what happened in that room. The conference room on the 14th floor had a view of the harbor, which I remember because I kept glancing at it, trying to stay calm. Marcus sat at the head of the table. Beside him, 3 people from Castellan, a VP of operations named Denise Okafor, and 2 directors I'd only spoken to over email. I opened the pitch. Walked them through the current state analysis, the bottlenecks we'd identified in their distribution model, the cost projections I'd built from actual freight data I'd spent 2 weeks requesting from their logistics team. Denise was nodding, taking notes. Good signs. Then we got to the solutions framework, the part one was proudest of, the part that had kept me at my desk until midnight more nights than I could count. Priya leaned forward. This is really where I want to walk you through the strategic thinking, she said, smiling at Denise like they were already old friends. When I was mapping out the redesign dash, I felt my stomach drop. She talked for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall behind Denise's head the entire time, unable to do anything but sit there while Priya described, in detail, decisions I had made. The vendor consolidation strategy, mine. The phased rollout timeline, mine, adjusted twice after Marcus's notes. Even a specific line I'd written in the deck about converting operational friction into margin came out of her mouth like she'd coined it in the shower that morning. Denise turned to her. This is impressive work. How long have you been with the firm? 8 months, Priya said. But I've been in supply chain strategy for over a decade. Marcus didn't correct her. Marcus was smiling too. I sat there in my own pitch meeting, watching someone else collect the applause for 11 weeks of my life, and I said nothing. Not because I was being gracious. Because I genuinely did not trust my own voice not to shake. The meeting ended with handshakes and Denise saying she'd be following up with Priya directly about next steps. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there running the meeting on a loop, replaying the exact moment Denise asked, "How long have you been with the firm?" and Priya answered like the 11 weeks I'd spent building that pitch had never happened. By morning, I'd stopped being hurt and started being methodical. I went back through every file. Every version history. Google Docs keeps a full edit log, and I had 11 weeks of timestamps proving I'd built the deck alone, with only 2 brief comment threads from Priya, one asking where the bathroom was on our floor, the other asking if she could leave early for a dentist appointment. I pulled the email thread where Marcus had asked me at 9:47 p.m. the night before the pitch whether Priya could co-present. I screenshotted the calendar invites for every working session, none of which she'd attended past the first 15 minutes. Then I did something I probably shouldn't admit enjoying as much as I did. I looked up Priya's LinkedIn. A decade in supply chain strategy, she'd told Denise. Her LinkedIn said something different. 6 years in retail merchandising at a mid-sized chain, then 2 years as a marketing coordinator, not strategy, not supply chain, at a beauty brand, then 8 months here. I cross-referenced her resume, the one HR had shared with the team when she started, against public records. Her senior strategist role at her previous company didn't exist in any org chart I could find. A former coworker of hers, whom I found through a mutual connection, confirmed over a very careful, very deniable phone call that Priya's actual title there had been marketing coordinator, full stop. She hadn't just taken credit for my work. She'd built her entire credibility with Castellan, with all of us, on a resume that was, in places, fiction. I didn't say anything to Marcus yet. I wanted to be sure. And I wanted a plan. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. I kept working, kept nodding in meetings, kept watching Priya field congratulations from people who had no idea the strategic thinking she was praised for wasn't hers. What I was actually doing was waiting for the right moment. Not to get her fired quietly in some HR side room where the story would get sanitized into a resume discrepancy and she'd land somewhere else in 6 months with a clean reference. I wanted the same room, the same table, the same audience that had watched her take my work. That opportunity came faster than I expected. Castellan wanted a follow-up meeting, not just Denise this time, but her boss, the VP of supply chain, plus 2 people from our own leadership who'd flown in from the New York office. Marcus called it a big swing. He also, without asking me, told the team Priya would be leading the follow-up presentation, since Castellan had specifically asked for her after the last meeting. Of course they had. She'd spent 2 weeks after the first pitch sending Denise personal follow-up emails, positioning herself as the primary point of contact. I'd seen them. Marcus had CC'd me on one by accident. I asked Marcus for 5 minutes on the agenda. Just 5. To cover the technical risk assessment, I told him, which was true, I had, in fact, built one, and it hadn't made it into the first pitch. He said sure. Nobody in that room, including Priya, thought 5 minutes could do much damage. I spent those 2 weeks building something else, too. A short appendix. Nothing dramatic on its face, just a methodology and team credentials slide, the kind consulting firms sometimes include to reassure enterprise clients they're working with qualified people. Marcus had actually asked for something like this after the first meeting, when Castellan's legal team requested background on the strategists assigned to our account before signing anything. I volunteered to put it together. The follow-up meeting happened on a Tuesday. Same 14th floor room, same harbor view, except this time it was fuller. Denise, her VP, 2 people from Castellan's legal team, Marcus, our New York leadership, and Priya, sitting where I'd sat 2 weeks earlier. She opened strong. I'll give her that too. She was a good talker, better at reading a room than actually understanding what was in the deck. She walked through the technical risk assessment I'd built, my slide, though nobody in that room knew that yet, and got 2 of the terms wrong in a way that made me quietly grateful I'd typed detailed speaker notes she clearly hadn't read. Then Marcus turned to me. And now, our team credentials overview. I stood up. I kept my voice level. I said we'd put together a brief background on the strategists supporting the account, since Castellan's legal team had requested it. Then I clicked to the slide. It had 2 columns. On the left, team experience, pulled directly and accurately. I double and triple-checked every line, from public records, prior employer confirmations, and, in a small footnote, per candidate's submitted resume. On the right, a simple table matching claim titles against verified titles. Priya's row was the only one with a discrepancy. I didn't say a word about the pitch meeting. I didn't say a word about the 11 weeks. I let the slide do it. Senior strategist, decade of supply chain experience on one side. Marketing coordinator, 2 years on the other, sourced and footnoted like every academic paper I'd ever had to defend. The room went very quiet. Denise's VP, whom I hadn't even met before that day, leaned forward and asked, in the flattest voice I've ever heard an executive use, "Can someone explain this discrepancy?" Nobody looked at me. Everybody looked at Priya. Priya's face had gone the color of the whiteboard behind her. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. There's context to that, she started. My role there had strategic elements, even if the title dash. The discrepancy isn't about elements, Denise's VP said. It's about a decade of claimed experience versus 2 years. That's not a title issue. That's a credibility issue. And this account is worth $11 million to my company. Marcus's face had gone the color of the whiteboard too. He looked at me, I think for the first time realizing I'd built that slide with a purpose. This wasn't in the version I approved, he said quietly, more to himself than anyone. You approved team credentials overview, I said. This is the team credentials. I want to say I felt triumphant in that moment. Mostly I felt very tired and a little sick, watching Priya's hands shake as she gathered her things when Denise's VP asked, flatly, for a few minutes with your leadership team without the presenting strategist in the room. She left. The meeting continued without her for almost an hour, Castellan's legal team asking pointed questions about our vetting process, our New York leadership doing a lot of apologizing, Denise, to her credit, asking me directly to walk through the actual technical assessment, since I clearly understood it better than the person who'd presented it. By the end, Castellan didn't walk. They wanted assurances, a revised team structure, and Denise said this looking directly at me, the person who actually built this deck on the account going forward, with a title that matches what she does. Marcus didn't say anything. He just nodded. Priya was gone within the week. Not fired outright, at least not on paper. HR called it a mutual separation, which I've come to understand is corporate for, we'll let you resign quietly if you don't make this a lawsuit. I heard secondhand that her exit interview included some choice words about me being vindictive and unprofessional for airing a colleague's business in front of a client. I didn't lose sleep over that. What surprised me wasn't losing Priya. It was watching how quickly the story rearranged itself once she was gone. Marcus started referring to me in meetings as the one who'd saved the Castellan account. My director skip level, someone who'd barely acknowledged my existence before, asked if I'd be interested in the senior strategist title, the actual title, the one Priya had claimed without ever earning it. I said yes. Of course I said yes. But something in me had changed, and it wasn't just the promotion. It was the 11 minutes I'd sat frozen in that first pitch meeting, watching someone take credit for 11 weeks of my life, and doing nothing. I promised myself I'd never sit through that again, not out of some dramatic vow, just a quiet decision that showed up in small ways afterward. I started saving my own working files with timestamps as a habit, not out of paranoia, just discipline. I started speaking up in meetings a beat sooner instead of waiting to be invited. I stopped assuming good work speaks for itself, because I'd watched, firsthand, how easily someone else's voice could speak over it. Castellan signed a 3-year contract. Denise still emails me directly when she has questions, and pointedly does not CC anyone else on our leadership team. Marcus never apologized outright for putting her in that room in the first place, for not double-checking a resume before letting someone present it as gospel to an $11 million client. But he stopped skipping my name when he introduced the team. I let that be enough. Mostly. It's been 8 months since Castellan signed. I run the account now, officially, with the title to match it. I've onboarded 2 junior strategists myself, and the first thing I tell them, before anything about clients or decks or deadlines, is document your own work. Not because I expect them to face what I faced, but because I did, and nobody had told me it might happen. I ran into Priya once, months later, at an industry mixer neither of us had any real business attending small talk at. She saw me first. For a second I thought she'd walk the other way. Instead, she came over, said she'd landed somewhere in marketing again, said it worked out for the best, said it with the kind of brightness that didn't quite reach her eyes. I told her I was glad. I meant it, mostly. I don't think I could have built a career on someone else's work forever either, and some part of me suspects she knows that too, even if she'll never say it to me directly. What stays with me isn't the satisfaction of that meeting, of watching her face fall over a single, well-sourced slide. It's the 11 minutes before it, the 11 minutes I sat there and said nothing, because I didn't think anyone would believe the quiet person over the confident one. I think about how close I came to just letting it go, to telling myself it wasn't worth the conflict, to being the kind of person who absorbs the loss and calls it professionalism. I'm glad I didn't. So here's what I actually want to know, because I think about this more than I probably should. If you'd sat in that first meeting and watched someone take credit for 11 weeks of your work in real time, would you have said something on the spot? Or would you have done what I did and waited for proof?